Brother confessed that he's in love with me, and now I face navigating the awkwardness and confusion this revelation brings. I was adopted from Russia when I was 3, and from the start, my family has meant everything to me. My parents already had 3 kids of their own, 2 older brothers and a sister, and even though I joined a bit later, there's always been such a strong bond between all of us. My siblings were my best friends growing up. Now, college has sent us scattering across the country, but the one brother closest to me in age, he's 20, I'm 19, has always been my partner in crime. Over the past year, though, I've started noticing little shifts in the way he acts around me. Where he used to just treat me like his annoying kid sister, making gross jokes at my expense or being effortlessly casual, there's suddenly an awkwardness. He's quieter, more reserved, and I can't shake off noticing the subtle change. Maybe it's just because we aren't sharing the same house anymore? Maybe the distance has made things weird? The change became really intense over Christmas break. He kept finding little excuses to touch me, holding my hand longer than usual, slinging his arm around my shoulder when we sat together. At first, I told myself it was just the way families act after being split up 4 months, but honestly, I started to feel suffocated, and I wondered if there was something more to it. Things got even stranger during a recent text exchange. There were undertones I couldn't quite put my finger on, and suddenly I was doubting myself. Was I reading too much into things? Was this maybe him being flirty? Or was he just growing up and struggling to show he cares in a new, awkward way? I'm honestly at a loss. If I bring up how uncomfortable it makes me, the fallout could be unbearably awkward, especially if I'm completely misreading the situation. I keep going back and forth in my head, wondering if I should say something or just chalk it up to distance and new phases in our lives. But every time I replay our conversations, I can't shake the feeling that something important has changed, and I can't figure out if it's just me. Hearing that shook me. I could sense how much pain he was feeling in the moment, but as the conversation continued and he kept apologizing and even begging, I felt nothing but disgust and the urgent need for space. I told him I needed to go. Since then, he's flooded my phone with desperate texts. Right now, I'm seriously considering blocking him for my own well-being, but I'm totally conflicted about how or when to let the rest of my family know what's happened. To make things even more overwhelming, I have 2 major exams coming up next week and a 20-page paper to finish, so my mind is already stretched to its limits. I had no idea my brother was struggling so much mentally until he admitted it last night and again today. I plan to message my parents and suggest they check on his mental health. I'm also going to bring up his behavior with them this weekend. Thankfully, he's across the country right now, so for the moment I can just focus on my own life and school. If it comes down to it, I'll cut him out of my life entirely, but cutting the rest of my family out is not an option for me. That is simply non-negotiable. Update 2. This morning, I had a session with my counselor, and she told me straight up that I needed to call my parents. I've been torn on whether I should do it or not, but I've decided I'm going to call them after dinner tonight. I'm not sure how much I'll want to share after this call, it just depends on how it goes. For now, I've muted my brother. He only texted me once today and I ignored it. Leading up to the call, my counselor suggested I write out exactly what I wanted to say, including both my needs and my brother's. It felt almost clinical, but I needed it to keep myself anchored and not lose track in the mess of emotions. During the call, I shared my screen over FaceTime so I could show our recent texts and the frankly disturbing number of times he tried to contact me, 30 phone calls in 24 hours. I started by telling my parents how concerned I was for his mental health, explaining that he had been acting erratic and unusually desperate, which is out of character for him. Normally, he's so chill, so level-headed. That's why the switch in him had me on edge from the start. I explained to them the first time I started noticing these changes, like over Christmas, when he was way too touchy and wanted me to do things that fell off. Nothing sexual, just weird, like that time he asked me to lay my head on his lap while we watched a movie, and when I got up to use the bathroom, he told me to get back down as soon as I returned. Or how he would just put his arm around me on the couch or hold my hand, making me feel smothered and uncomfortable. I had pulled up screenshots too, some from way back, going through our messages and realizing there were things I missed at the time. Things that, looking back, were definitely flirty even though I didn't want to recognize it then. Then I showed them the text that sent me over the edge, where he called me beautiful and admitted he was nervous. Through all of this, my parents listened intently, nodding, telling me to keep going. When I showed them the aftermath, our exchange after my brother and I spoke, my mom looked downright nauseous. My dad, who's usually solemn, just went stale and looked seriously disturbed, almost angry. My mom immediately started apologizing, panicking, asking me if I was okay, if I needed anything. All I could say was that I just wanted my brother to get better, but right now, I needed space. I didn't want him to contact me. I asked them to call him right after and check on him, and I stressed that I didn't want them to get him into trouble, just to make sure he was safe. That was the truth. Of course, my dad, coming from a more conservative background than my mom, zeroed in on my clothes. I like wearing Brandy Melville just crop tanks, really nothing outrageous, but he got upset, asking why I couldn't dress more appropriately at home and implying maybe things could have been different if I had. He's never liked how I dress even though it's no different from any other girl my age, so it wasn't a shock, but it still stung. I found myself crying, apologizing even though I know it's not on me. It was such a stressful call. My dad, he just had this misplaced anger, while my mom didn't know what to do. They said they'd call me again tomorrow after speaking to my brother to talk over next steps. There's something else I need to get off my chest. I guess some people think this is part of some weird kink or fetish. It's disgusting. The idea that someone would fake all those texts and write all this just to be creepy is sadly believable, considering some of the revolting things people have said to me in the past. But I want to make one thing clear, I'm just sharing here to get help and advice. I don't condone any of this sick behavior. I know I can't really prove my story is real, but I just need guidance, that's all I want. Hearing from other women who went through similar things within their families gave me some comfort, in a twisted way. I had no idea situations like mine were so common. My heart aches for anyone who has ever gone through this. It's honestly the most stressed I've ever been in my life. Thank you, truly, for all the support. Update 3. Last night, I called my parents and tried to explain what had happened, a much condensed version because it was difficult enough to say the words out loud. The reaction was exactly what I expected, but it still left me shaken. My mom immediately apologized to me over and over, worried and asking if I was truly okay, while my dad, he sorta turned it around and blamed me. He said I shouldn't have been wearing what I wear around the house, as if that could have changed anything. The whole conversation felt like a whirlwind, confusing and unsatisfying. After that call, my parents called my brother. I don't know exactly what was said, but they rang me today to let me know that, according to them, he sounded perfectly normal. Not a threat to me, not a threat to himself. They wanted to hear his side of the story, and apparently he denied everything physical that happened over break. I don't recall any of that, is what he told them. For the texts he sent me, his excuse was that he was really drunk. I told my parents that's a terrible excuse. If I were drunk, I would never have sent those kinds of texts, never made that kind of call to someone I loved. And I pointed out that if he'd been that drunk in every single one of those texts, day and night, then something is seriously wrong with him emotionally. But my dad, I think, just really wants to pretend none of this is happening. He keeps saying it was just a momentary lapse in my brother's judgment. My mom, I don't even know. She seems lost, caught between wanting to believe her golden child and wanting to protect me. I don't blame them for being shocked or confused. As far as they are concerned, my brother has always been perfect. But now I'm sitting here stuck. Is he struggling mentally and won't admit it, or did he just use being drunk as a flimsy excuse to pour everything out to me and avoid dealing with the fallout? Part of me desperately hopes he gets the help he clearly needs, and if he is struggling, I want him to get better, but another, much bigger part of me knows I can't be the one to fix him. I don't want anything to do with him right now. And then, out of nowhere, he sends me a TikTok like nothing ever happened, like he can just slip right back in and ignore every boundary I've ever set. I swear, he just does not accept my boundaries no matter how many times I make them clear. I'm planning to tell my parents again, in no uncertain terms, that he needs to stop messaging me. If he doesn't, I'll block him, and that'll be that. In the meantime, I've been confiding in my friends, trying to figure out what on earth I should do. One friend even offered to split rent with me over the summer. I don't know if my parents will agree to help pay, but regardless, I'll find a job if I need to because I simply don't feel safe going back home. Maybe I'm being paranoid, but the thought of what he could do if he doesn't get the help he needs terrifies me. I'm trying my best to be empathetic. Who knows what struggles he's hiding, but it feels so unfair to bear this burden. It's like it's become my problem to solve, and it shouldn't be. Right now, my biggest hope is that my parents realize how serious this is and go check on him in person, but honestly, who knows if they'll actually do it. Maybe my dad will finally see a reason. And if things don't change, I'm seriously thinking about reaching out to my sister behind their backs. I know she have my back, no matter what. Update 4. This is probably my final update for a while, since I'm hoping to finally resolve all of this today. On Friday night, I decided it was best for my own peace to block my brother. I sent him a text, "It seems like you can't respect my boundaries. For your healing and mine, I have decided to block you for the time being. I do not want this to be permanent, but I need to focus on school, and you are making it extremely difficult at the present. I wish you the best and hope you get help." He never got a chance to respond, at least not through a message. Saturday night, I was out with friends. My phone was on Do Not Disturb, and I didn't notice until I made it back to my dorm that I had a ton of calls on Instagram calls from my brother. It slipped my mind that I'd need to block him everywhere, not just my phone. As I opened his profile, ready to block him on Instagram, he called again, and somehow, my thumb slipped and I accidentally answered. For a moment, I figured maybe this was actually the time to say what really needed to be said, to make it perfectly clear that I needed him to leave me alone. Clearly, none of my other warnings had gotten through. The moment I answered, he launched into a desperate flood of, "Oh my God, I am so happy you answered, I needed to know you were okay," and on and on. I cut him off and told him, right there, that I was about to block him on Instagram, too, and that I really needed him to step back and get some real mental health help, something he apparently refuses to accept, at least according to our mom and dad. He kept insisting he didn't want to lose me, that he never wanted me uncomfortable, that he couldn't concentrate unless things between us were okay. I told him again, I wasn't mad. I just needed space, I just wanted him to get better. Then he asked if he could fly out here for his spring break in 3 weeks. The same spring break he already had a Hawaii trip planned for with his friends, which makes it so bizarre that he'd consider dropping everything for this. I told him absolutely not. I needed months of space, not just a week or 2. I told him he should go to Hawaii, focus on his friends, take his mind off everything. That still wasn't enough, he insisted. If I came to your city, I wouldn't even bother you, I just want to be closer, do my own thing. I stayed firm, no. I have to leave now. Please don't contact me again. I will reach out when, and if, I'm ready. I hung up before he could say anything else and blocked him on every single social media platform I could think of. The truth is, he's clearly unwell, and that scares me. He keeps pushing, even when he has to see how uncomfortable it makes me. I'm getting worried, but for now, I'm going to try to sort this out, and I have an appointment with my counselor this afternoon. That's it for now. I honestly think everything that needed to be said has been said. Before I forget, I did talk to my sister about this. She believed me after I showed her proof and told me she supported me with whatever I need to do to feel safe. I asked if our brother had ever been weird with her. She said no, and that he probably always just saw me as an annoying addition to the family, not really a sister. Whatever that means. But at least she's backing me up, even if it's mostly mental support. She's got a baby, a full-time job, and lives out of state, so she can't do much else. But the support means a lot. Update 5. I know I said I was done for a while, but last night forced my hand. I was at my desk trying to finish a citation page when a DM request popped up on Instagram from a name I recognized instantly as X. We've never followed each other or talked, but she started with, "I'm sorry to message you like this, but I think you need to see something." My stomach dropped before I even opened the screenshots. She sent me a whole chain from him, time-stamped over the last 2 days. He'd reached out to her after I blocked him everywhere, telling her he was scared for me and needed help passing a message along. It spiraled into him telling her he couldn't think and that something inside him broke when I said I needed space. Then came the photo and airline confirmation with his full name, the departure city I knew, and my city as the arrival. Not in 3 weeks. This coming weekend. I could see the date and a little confirmation code in the corner, and I swear, I felt my hands go cold. He'd booked a flight to show up here even after I told him not to come, after I blocked him, after I said months of space. I kept staring at the pixelated header like maybe I was misreading it, but there it was. Hate. Seat assigned. The ex wasn't just dumping this on me for drama, she was panicked. She said she told him it was a bad idea, that he needed to listen to me, and that she would not be part of it. She also said, and this is the part that knocked the wind out of me, that this isn't as new as it feels to me. Their breakup last summer wasn't just growing apart. She said he had already been talking about me in this reverent way for months. Comparing hair, the way I laugh, asking her to dress like me as a joke, then insisting it wasn't. Once he told her he didn't think anyone would get him like I do because we grew up together. She'd brushed it off at the time because she loved him and he could be so normal and charming it almost erased the weirdness. Reading her messages, I realized she'd probably been trying to talk herself out of believing it too. I called my mom before I could think straight. She answered on the second ring, and I just said, "He bought a ticket." I forwarded everything while she was on the line. I could hear her breath change as she read. She didn't even try to keep her voice steady, she just said, "I'm calling your father," and put me on hold. When they came back, my dad didn't do that stern, measured tone he always uses. He asked for the confirmation number and said my mom was already trying to get a hold of your brother. He said, without me prompting, I shouldn't have said what I said about your clothes. No excuse, no hedging, just that, and even though it didn't fix anything, it unclenched something in me I didn't realize had gotten so tight. It turned into this awful three-way relay for the next hour. Mom calling him, then calling me, then putting me on hold to call his roommate because he wouldn't pick up. The roommate finally answered and, in the background, I could hear the echo of a video game and someone else laughing like nothing urgent was happening. He sounded confused more than anything. He said my brother had been weird about sleep up all night, then passing out at noon but otherwise fine. When Mom asked if he knew about a trip this weekend, he hesitated and said, he mentioned maybe surprising someone, and then immediately, I don't want to be involved. Fair. I wouldn't either. When my brother finally picked up, it was to my parents, not to me. They put me on mute and then forgot to mute, so I heard it. I heard my mom's voice shaking and my dad trying to keep it together. I heard my brother say, it's just a weekend. I won't even see her if she doesn't want to. I just need to be near. That word near was like someone tipping a bucket of ice water down my spine. My dad said no. My mom said no. He started angling, bargaining, offering to stay in a hotel on the other side of town, to just walk around and feel close. It was so unhinged and so heartbreakingly earnest at the same time that I wanted to scream and cry and throw my phone out the window. When my dad finally raised his voice, it wasn't angry, it was terrified. He said, if you get on that plane, you will blow up this family. Don't do this. I hung up and went straight to my raw. It was late, the kind of late where voices sound too loud in a quiet hall, but I sat on the hallway floor outside her door with my laptop open and showed her the confirmation, the texts, everything. She didn't blink. She walked me downstairs and introduced me to the building director, and then we sat under these harsh fluorescent lights while I answered questions I never imagined having to answer about my own brother. Within an hour, campus police had my report and his name and a note to alert me if anyone checked in asking for me. They told me, in very straightforward terms, to call immediately if he showed up on campus, at my dorm, or at any of my classes. Hearing it framed like that, like there were procedures and doors that could lock and people who would actually intervene, eased a tiny corner of the fear. Not all of it. Just enough that when I finally got back to my room, I could breathe without that shaky edge. In the middle of all of this, my sister FaceTimed me. It was one of those chaos calls where the baby's on her hip and there's a pot boiling behind her and yet she was laser focused. She asked me for the flight details. She said, if he lands there, you call me, and I don't care if it's 3 a.m. She also told me she'd spoken to him earlier in the week before I even reached out and he'd hung up on her when she said the word boundary. I don't know why that small detail made me feel less crazy, but it did. It means I'm not the only one getting the split-screen version of him. I tried to sleep. I genuinely tried. I fell into that weird half-sleep where your brain keeps replaying the same 10 seconds of a nightmare. At 4:27 a.m. my mom texted me a screenshot from her phone, ticket cancelled. Then, right after, a photo of his school ID and his passport on their kitchen table. She didn't elaborate, but I pieced it together. She must have gotten him to send the confirmation, and then she pulled every lever she could. I don't know what threats were made, what bargains, what breaks. She didn't tell me. She just said, rest. We're handling it. When the sun came up, my dad called me and sounded 20 years older than he did yesterday. He said they were flying out to him today. He said there would be appointments, plural. He asked me again to send him the messages in one email so he could have them all in one place for the doctor. For the first time since this started, I believe they saw it for what it is, not a mistake, not just drunk, not a lapse. A problem with a name that someone qualified can deal with. Hearing that didn't make me feel better so much as it made me feel less alone in it. I still moved my spare key. I still told 2 friends in my building and sent them my class schedule like a dorky overprotective parent might. I still jumped when someone knocked on our door this afternoon and stood frozen until my roommate got up to answer. It was just the girl down the hall wanting to borrow a blender. I laughed so hard I almost cried. I want to say that this is the end of it, that a cancelled ticket and a set of terrified parents and raw who knows my brother's name are enough to flip the switch back to normal. It doesn't feel like that. It feels like someone stopped a car before it hit me, but the headlights are burned into my eyes and I'm going to see them every time I close them for a while. I keep thinking about the way he said near. The way it sounded like a plea in a plant hall is for once. I don't know when I'll post again. Maybe not for a long time. But I know this, if he shows up here, I will not answer the door. And if my phone buzzes with some unknown number and a city code I recognize, I won't pick up. I'll watch the tiny blinking light on my laptop that means the building door is locked, and I'll wait until I can sleep or regular sleep again. My sister promised me I will get back to regular. I'm holding her to that. Update 6. I thought the cancelled ticket would be the end of the emergency feeling. It wasn't. It just changed shape. I was halfway through a lab when my phone lit up with our area code and I slipped out into the echo of the stairwell to answer. It was my mom, whispering like she was trying not to wake anyone up, but I could hear the hum of a vending machine and the clang of a metal door behind her. "We're at the hospital," she said. "Behavioral health wing." I slid down the wall until I was sitting on cold concrete. She told me he'd agreed to come just to talk, and then they didn't let him leave. Not a full hold, not handcuffs, just a quiet hand on his shoulder and a nurse with a badge that said social worker and a door that clicks behind you when it shuts. He didn't fight them, apparently. He went thoughtful and still in that way he always did before soccer games, like he thought if he contained his body his brain would line up. He gave my dad his phone. He told my mom he didn't mean to scare me and then said something that made my mom cry so suddenly she had to hand the line to my dad. "I don't think of it as wrong the way you all think of it. I don't even know what to do with a sentence like that. I just stare at the cinderblock pattern in front of me until it blurred." My dad's voice has lost all the sharp edges I'm used to. He said, plain as anything, "We are not minimizing this. We are not excusing this. We are here." He told me he'd spoken with intake. They wanted everything: dates, screenshots, a timeline. I felt weirdly guilty forwarding it to a generic hospital email until my dad texted me, "For the doctor," and it felt less like betrayal and more like handing damning evidence to an authority who can do something with it. 5 minutes later, he called me back to ask what the names of my RA and building director were. I don't know if he planned to call them, or if it just helped him to have a list of people who are real and watching me. There was a backpack, apparently. Mom asked him to hand it over before intake and he did. When she finally opened it in their hotel room, she found a folded printout of the campus map from my school's website. I didn't want details and she didn't give me many, just that there were little X's in pencil that could have meant anything, and one of the fold lines ran exactly through the block my dorm sits on. I didn't vomit this time. I just felt my body go electric cold like when you touch your tongue to a battery on a dare as a kid. I walked directly to the housing office after class and said, "I need my lock record." They did it while I sat there pretending to answer emails. Watching them replace a cylinder in a door made it feel like something in the world can be made different with a tool and a practiced hand. The campus police followed up and made it official: he is persona non grata here. If he steps on campus, it sets off a series of things that happen whether I call or not. They gave me a number anyway and a little laminated card with 3 lines on it. My RA slipped a sticky note under my door later with a code word: "She'll answer even if she's asleep." It felt childish and life-saving at the same time. Late afternoon, between emails and that floaty out-of-body feeling I can't shake, I opened the mailbox in our lobby and there was a padded envelope with my name and no return. I carried it back up like it might be wired to something and slid it onto my desk and stood there staring at it until my roommate came back. We opened it together with kitchen scissors, both of us holding our breath like idiots. It was a note card, thick and textured, the kind you get from stationery stores when you're trying to look like a person who writes real mail. Inside was a single line in pen: "I miss the lake." No signature. No date. The handwriting didn't look like his or mine. It didn't look like anyone's. We put it back in the envelope and walked it down to the building director. He logged it and tucked it into a file with my name on it and said, "Calm as reading a recipe, you did the right thing. Don't keep anything that feels like a message. The lake is ours, our childhood summer place." Of course it could be coincidence. Of course it could not. Around dinner time, my sister FaceTimed me from her minivan in a grocery store parking lot. The baby threw a teething ring at the camera and my sister said, "He's in, right?" I nodded. She said, "Good. Okay. I booked a flight. 36 hours. I'm coming." It made me laugh because it sounded like we were soldiers or surgeons. She said she'd sleep on my floor and we'd get pancakes at midnight like idiots in college again, except we were never actually in college together. I didn't tell her she didn't have to come. People have told me so many times in the last few days what they're going to do, and this was the first time it sounded like an offer instead of a directive. My dad called again from the hotel later, tinny ice machine in the background, and read me a list of sentences he'd practiced saying to me. One of them was, "I am sorry I said those things about your clothes." He didn't just stop there this time. He added, "It wouldn't have mattered if you wore a winter coat in July. This wasn't about you. Then, we will not put you in a room with him, not at home, not at Christmas, not anywhere, until you say so." It didn't wipe anything clean. It did land. I could feel it land. He also said he and my mom moved my brother's passport and state ID into their hotel safe and texted me a photo like they were sending ransom proof. There's something so backwards about needing visual confirmation that your family took your other family members' documents. I saved the photo anyway. The ex reached out again. Not drama. Just a short message that said she told him, in writing, she wanted no contact and then blocked him. She sent me one last screenshot of a draft email he'd written to me and never sent. She found it open on a shared Google Drive from an old project. It was paragraphs of the same pleading, but in the middle there was this one normal, mundane sentence that hit me harder than all the aching romantic talk. I keep waking up at 3:11 a.m. thinking you might be awake too. It was so ordinary I wanted to bury my phone in the backyard just to get away from how human it sounded. Mom texted me updates from chairs and lobbies. Initial words from doctors that are all caveat and caution: obsessive ideation, impaired judgment, rule out mood disorder, possible mixed features. A plan that looks like nights inside bright hallways and days full of group schedules. No phones while he's there. He can write letters for therapeutic processing, but they won't send them unless approved. When I read that line, my hands went cold again in a different way. Someone else holds the mail slot now. That shouldn't feel like relief, but it does. I told my counselor everything this afternoon and she did the grounding thing where she pointed out actual objects in my actual room and then said, like she was telling me how to cook pasta, that I can write a statement for his providers if I want, about impact and boundaries. Not to convince anyone of anything, not to litigate, just to put my words where they can be read by someone who is charting this. I started it right after we hung up. I am his sister. I do not consent to contact. He is not safe for me to be around right now. I thought it would be messy, but it came out clean. They offered me a temporary room in another building for a week if I wanted. I took it. I packed a duffel with way too many socks and my laptop and the mug I like and my blanket that smells like the laundry at home. My roommate hugged me so awkwardly at the door we both started laughing. In the elevator, a kid with a skateboard asked me if I was moving out and I said, just trying a new view, like I was switching tables at coffee shop. In a new room, I pushed the bed against the wall and then pulled it back because I hated feeling cornered. I ended up sleeping exactly in the middle, like I was drawing a line in my own sheets. This morning, my mom called from a hospital parking lot again and told me he'd asked for a book and then said he wanted to write things down so he doesn't forget why people are mad. She said it like someone reading a word in a language she doesn't know. I don't know if that sentence means he understands anything. It didn't feel like a breakthrough. It felt like the first time he noticed the wall he's been pushing against. It's weird, the practical ways this bleeds into everything. My professor gave me an extension without me asking after I sent the Title Roman 9 office a heads-up email and it trickled into the right inboxes. My dad Venmo'd me money and the note said summer place your choice, like we were buying a beach house and not just trying to make sure I don't ever have to sleep under the same roof as my brother again. My sister sent me a video of the baby banging a wooden spoon on a cereal box and it made my chest ache with something that's not sadness for the first time this week. If you'd told me a month ago that I'd be comforted by a lock cylinder in a hotel safe and a laminated card, I would have laughed. Now it's those tiny, oddly, practical things holding the net up. My mom said the doctor told them this isn't a movie. No miraculous confessions, no one speech that fixes it. Just slow days. Check, hints. An apartment that will probably need to be moved out of. Meds that might take weeks to settle. Me sleeping in a borrowed room and answering my phone when my dad calls even if I don't want to.